Today, I'm bringing you a book that doesn't sugarcoat life's realities. It's raw, honest, and refreshingly different from your typical self-help book. Welcome to the summary of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F*** by Mark Manson. In a world where we're constantly told to chase happiness, always be positive, and strive for success, this book tells us the opposite. Stop caring about everything, not in the sense of indifference, but in the sense of focusing on what truly matters and letting go of the rest. Through hard-hitting truths and humor, Manson guides us to understand that failure, pain, and struggles are inevitable, and that's okay. What matters is choosing your battles wisely and learning to care only about the things that align with your values. So, if you're tired of trying to meet unrealistic expectations or constantly chasing things that don't bring real happiness, this book will show you a new way of thinking. Let's dive into The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F*** and uncover the lessons that will help you live a more meaningful life by caring less about the noise and more about what really counts. Chapter 1. Don't Try. Charles Bukowski was an alcoholic, a big-time gambler, and a man who seemed to have lost at life, someone whose advice few would ever seek. That's why we begin with his story. Bukowski always wanted to be a writer, but his work was constantly rejected by newspapers and magazines, labeled as low quality and unworthy. Depressed by this, he turned to alcohol and eventually became a heavy drinker. After wasting nearly 30 years of his life on booze and gambling, an unexpected opportunity came his way. A small publishing house took an interest in his work. Bukowski grabbed this rare chance and signed the contract immediately. He went on to write his first book, and from then on, there was no looking back. Over the years, he wrote 6 more books, many poems, and sold over 2 million copies of his works. This was a massive success for him. But despite his achievements, Bukowski's gravestone read, "Don't try." Bukowski's success wasn't about perseverance after failure. What stood out was that he accepted himself, even at his worst. Success didn't change him. He didn't suddenly become a better or more refined person, and his goodness had nothing to do with his achievements. We all face moments in life when things go from bad to worse. For example, you may have trouble controlling your anger. The more you try to suppress it, the angrier you become. How ironic is that? It's funny, isn't it? You get angry about being angry. You try to find ways to control it, but fail, and soon you start hating yourself for this uncontrollable rage. When you're sad about being lonely, your mind is filled with sad thoughts, and you end up overthinking, which makes you feel even worse. This, my friend, is what we call the feedback loop from hell. Think back to your grandparents' time. Back then, when someone saw someone better off, they might have felt sad for a moment, but quickly got back to their work, accepting that's just life. But now, even a 5-second dip in mood can make you feel like everyone else's life is better than yours. You start feeling ashamed, like you've lost everything, and this shame creates an endless loop. That's why you need to stop worrying about these things. If you're feeling down, it's okay. It happens to everyone. Break free from this shame loop and say to the things bothering you, "I don't give a f***." Thinking that everything should always go well for you is the most harmful mindset. According to philosopher Alan Watts, accepting negative experiences is itself a positive experience. It sounds strange, but it's true. The more you chase happiness, the more miserable you'll be. In other words, don't even try. Have you ever noticed how things come to you easily when you stop caring so much instead of chasing them desperately? Like when you go to the gym, you endure a lot of pain during your workout. but that pain rewards you with strong muscles. In exchange for a little pain, you get a fit, beautiful body and improved health. Similarly, when you fail at something, that failure fuels you to try again with more energy. The more you try to avoid pain, the more painful it becomes. Instead of trying to block pain or failure, just stop caring about them. Then you'll see that nothing can stop you. But not caring doesn't mean sitting still and doing nothing or becoming completely numb to life like a stone. Only the dead feel nothing. We're not asking you to be that way. What we mean is that not caring means staying calm no matter the situation, even if your way of thinking is different from others. Be different, be yourself instead of becoming indifferent like a lifeless object. You don't want to be that kind of person who is unaffected by anything, a coward or a fool. You don't need to be emotionless. Just be carefree enough to avoid unnecessary stress. Sometimes, though, you do need to care about certain things. So, the question arises, what should you really care about? The author shares a story about his mother. One day, his mother's friend swindled her out of a large amount of money. Now, if the author truly didn't care, he wouldn't have bothered at all. But he did care about his mother's situation and assured her that they would get legal help and teach the person a lesson. He acted because he didn't give a about the scammer. Chapter 2. Happiness is a Problem. This story takes us back 2,500 years to Nepal, where a king deeply loved his son and had grand dreams for him. The king wanted to give his son everything in life, ensuring he never lacked anything. To keep his son happy, the king built a grand palace surrounded by high walls, isolating him from the outside world. He wanted to shield his son from every pain and difficulty. Despite all the luxuries within the palace, the prince wasn't happy. He grew tired of this sheltered life and longed to see the outside world. One day, the prince seized an opportunity and left the palace. As he wandered through his kingdom, he witnessed pain for the first time when he saw people suffering from hunger and disease. The sight of these poor struggling people plunged him into deep sadness. He became angry with his father for keeping him ignorant of this harsh reality. The prince decided to renounce his royal life and live as a beggar. Without telling anyone, he quietly left the palace and went into the forest. After spending several years in the wilderness, the prince realized that his extreme austerities and fasting were pointless. He learned that just because something is painful doesn't mean it's good for you. Life itself is full of suffering. A rich man suffers because of his wealth, and a poor man suffers due to the lack of it. The truth is, happiness has no fixed measure. Achieving something doesn't guarantee lifelong happiness. We endure pain because it inspires us, sparking change within us, and change is essential for life. Our struggles give us the strength to survive. Pain teaches us to pay attention when we become careless. So, happiness and comfort aren't always the best options. Sometimes, pain is necessary. Even psychological pain serves a purpose, guiding us to make better decisions in the future. Happiness can't be found without fighting through hardships. In other words, problems are the key to happiness. When you solve your problems, happiness naturally follows. So, instead of avoiding difficulties, face them. That's the key to true joy. The key to happiness is not to run from problems, but to solve them. Emotions are often overrated. But what exactly are emotions? Emotions are simply signals from our brain telling us something is wrong and needs fixing. To put it simply, negative emotions push us to take action, while positive emotions are our brain's way of rewarding us for doing the right thing. The real question isn't What do you want in life? That's a common and unremarkable question. Instead, the question should be, what kind of pain are you willing to endure? Most people never ask themselves this, but you should choose your struggles wisely. Many people want rewards without any struggle, but that's not how life works. In fact, nothing could be worse than getting everything without earning it. So choose your hardships, because life will give you pain regardless, and the pain you don't choose will hurt much more. Chapter 3. You are not special. There was a man named Jimmy who always had some business idea or the other brewing in his mind. His life was going smoothly. He was living off his parents' money. Whatever he spent on his business ideas, he'd spend an equal amount at bars. None of his ideas ever succeeded, but the way he talked and the confidence he had in himself was impressive. His charisma would turn you into his fan, even if you knew his real story. This was in the 1960s, when the idea that we're all unique and special first started to gain traction. Back then, everyone believed they were extraordinary. But after a few years, people realized that wasn't really true. Not everyone is meant to excel at everything. Failure is a necessary part of growth, and we all must go through it. Believing you're special for no reason is like creating another Jimmy. The problem with self-esteem is that it measures how positive you can feel about yourself, but it should actually be about how well you understand your negative side. How aware are you of your flaws? If you believe you're 100% perfect without facing any hardships, how will you tackle the challenges in your life? You'll only be dreaming of success that doesn't actually exist. If all you do is think about how to make life better without taking any real action, nothing will happen. Sometimes we face problems in life that seem unsolvable, and that's when we start to feel different, either in a good way or a bad way. We think we're either the best or the worst. Many people swing between these two extremes, struggling to balance the feelings of superiority and inferiority. But the truth is, no problem is truly unique to just you. Your personal problem isn't really personal. There are plenty of others in the world going through similar situations. While this realization might not solve your problems, it will show you that you're not so different from everyone else. Today, it's become common to see speakers banned or books removed from school curriculums because they offend someone's feelings. This is a form of selfishness, a self-entitlement issue. Not everyone is born to do something extraordinary. The phrase we often hear from influencers, "we all have something special within us," isn't entirely accurate. Think about it. If we're all unique, then that makes us all the same, right? So where's the uniqueness in that? It's better to accept ourselves as we are. There's no shame in being ordinary. This doesn't mean we can't succeed because we're average. In fact, people become great precisely because they feel the need to improve themselves. They became great because they recognized they weren't great yet. It's this mindset that allowed them to achieve greatness. Think about that for a moment. Chapter 4. The Value of Suffering. In 1944, Japan suffered heavy losses in the war. 2 months after these losses, a Japanese officer named Onoda stayed behind on an island captured by the Americans. He kept fighting, unaware that Japan had already surrendered. For years, Onoda survived on the island, shooting at local farmers, believing he was still at war. The Japanese government spent 30 years trying to find him, but he evaded capture the entire time. Then one day, a cheerful man named Suzuki decided to go find him, and within just 4 days, he succeeded. When people later asked Onoda why he stayed on that island for 30 years, He said he had been ordered never to surrender, so he never did. It's astonishing to think about how someone could waste such a huge part of their life on something so pointless. Like Lieutenant Onoda, who spent 30 years eating bugs and sleeping in filth, fighting a war that didn't even exist. Understanding yourself is much like peeling an onion. It has many layers, and as each layer comes off, tears fall from your eyes. The first layer is understanding your emotions. The second layer is figuring out the cause of those emotions. Once you understand them, it becomes easier to control them. And once you know your emotions, you can choose them consciously. You can set your goals based on these feelings. But if you choose the wrong goals, none of those feelings or emotions will matter, because we only value things that have emotional significance to us. There are some common values that trouble many people, yet they offer no real solution. These values are happiness. Many people see happiness as the ultimate value. However, we don't do everything solely for happiness, and life is never perfect. Although people try, you will inevitably experience sorrow. If you constantly try to avoid suffering, you'll end up feeling even worse. Suffering is part of life, and the key is to find a way to learn from it. Material success. Success should never be measured by how much wealth you have, how beautiful your spouse is, or similar things. Instead, it should be based on your honesty, hard work, and love for others. Showing off your wealth doesn't make you superior. It just makes you look foolish. Always being right. Remember, we are humans, not robots programmed to be perfect in every task. Our minds aren't built for perfection. We make mistakes. What's important is learning from those mistakes instead of repeating them. No one is always right. Keeping track of how often you were right is pointless. It won't teach you anything new. Staying positive. While positive thinking has its benefits, expecting life to be always positive and perfect can lead to problems. In reality, life has many ups and downs, and you must accept this truth. If you don't, you'll end up stuck in a negative feedback loop. Trying too hard to block out negative emotions will only invite more negativity. When a negative thought arises, don't suppress it. Instead, think about how you'll deal with it if it actually happens. Chapter 5. You Always Choose. American philosopher William James was deeply troubled by life. He faced numerous problems. He had eye issues, hearing loss, and several other life-threatening illnesses. These ailments kept him confined at home for most of his life. He had a passion for painting, so he spent his days creating art. However, no one believed he was capable of producing good paintings. His father went to great lengths to get him into medical school, but James abandoned everything and embarked on an anthropological expedition to the Amazon rainforest. Strangely enough, his health improved during the expedition, but then he contracted smallpox and barely survived. James was forced to abandon his expedition. While his colleagues continued, he was left stranded in South America. Somehow, he made his way back to New England, where his father, already disappointed in him, was waiting. After enduring a lifetime of hardships, one night James made a decision. From now on, he would take full responsibility for his life and do everything he could to change it. He even resolved that if he failed, he would take his own life. In the end, William James became the father of American psychology. His story teaches us that we must take responsibility for our actions and choices rather than relying on others. Now, imagine your life partner, whom you love dearly, tells you that you must lose 30 kilos in a week, or they will leave you. Just hearing such a demand would leave you feeling overwhelmed, right? Let's say you start going to the gym, eating healthy, and actually manage to lose the 30 kilos. How would you feel? Pretty amazing, right? But why do your feelings toward your partner change? Because you didn't choose to do it for yourself. You did it because you were told to. However, when you choose to do something on your own, you give it your all, no matter how tough it gets. And after overcoming the challenges, you feel a great sense of satisfaction. That's why it's important to choose your own struggles, because life will always throw problems your way, and you never know when or how they'll appear. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, is a neurological and genetic disorder that has no definitive cure, although it can be managed to some extent. So, how do people suffering from this disorder manage it? The answer lies in changing their mindset. For example, people who are constantly afraid of germs and wash their hands repeatedly must learn that no matter what they do, germs will always be around them. They can't eliminate them completely. Others, who compulsively tap in the same spot out of fear that their family will die if they don't, need to understand that death is inevitable. Everyone who is born will eventually die, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Instead of getting caught up in obsessive thoughts, they can focus on more meaningful aspects of life. When such thoughts arise, don't suppress them. Let them come, but try to redirect your thinking. People who learn to live with these thoughts instead of losing hope can improve their lives significantly. Chapter 6. You're wrong about everything, and so am I. Incomplete memories are a real problem. You believe something wholeheartedly, only to discover that it was false. A distorted memory embedded in your mind. Take the case of Meredith Moran, an author and journalist who once accused her father of raping her when she was a child. This memory suddenly surfaced in her mind one day, but it tore her family apart. Years later, the truth came out. It was nothing more than a figment of her imagination. It wasn't too long ago that scientists believed fire was made of a substance called phlogiston, and some women thought that rubbing dog urine on their faces would keep them forever young. When you fall in love, you dream of spending your entire life with that person. Then, when you break up, your belief in love fades. But despite that, you eventually fall in love again and start thinking of spending your life with someone else. The reality is, we're all wrong about things at some point, and there's no shame in admitting it. It happens to everyone. We think one thing, but the reality often turns out to be something else. And in a way, this is how we learn and grow. Strong convictions have always been enemies of growth. To learn something new, we must accept our imperfections. If we believe we're perfect, we won't be open to learning anything new, and we'll remain stuck in our own limited mindset. For example, science never deals in absolutes. There's always room for possibilities. Even when something is believed to be certain, there's always room for debate. When you experience something for the first time, you can't always be sure whether it's a positive or negative experience. What you think is the worst moment of your life could actually turn out to be the most positive experience for you in the long run. Sure, it might have felt terrible at the time, but your emotions change over time, and you can't rely on them completely. Certainty and perfection take the fun out of life. What you believe to be the right course of action may not actually be right at all. Certainty is a dangerous thing. Think about a situation where one of your coworkers gets a promotion when you were certain it would be yours. In such a case, your strong belief misled you and made you feel bad. That same belief may have also been the source of your insecurity. Chapter 7. Failure is the way forward. The author of this book considers himself quite lucky. Do you know why? When he graduated, the Great Recession was in full swing. His roommate disappeared, leaving him with 3 months' worth of unpaid rent. Dealing with all this was challenging for him, but he managed to keep himself from drowning in debt. He feels fortunate because, despite these failures, he learned how the world works. He had already hit rock bottom, and once you're there, there's nowhere to go but up. From that point, anything that happened to him was an improvement. There's a famous story about the great painter Picasso. One day, an elderly Picasso was sitting at a cafe, sipping his coffee and doodling on a napkin. After finishing his little sketch, he was about to throw it away when a woman sitting nearby asked if she could buy it. Picasso agreed and asked for $20,000. The woman was shocked at such a high price for a small napkin sketch. She refused, saying it only took him 2 minutes to draw. To this, Picasso replied that it had taken him 60 years to learn how to draw like that, not just 2 minutes. The point is, Picasso must have failed countless times before reaching that level of mastery. He kept trying, never giving up, because success doesn't come overnight. Children don't stop trying to walk, no matter how many times they fall. Why? Because they don't yet understand the concept of failure. Many of us fear failure, but the truth is, without stumbling or failing, you cannot succeed. Choose your goals in a way that you have control over them. Don't base them on things like earning money or making others happy. If you don't have control over your goals, they will end up controlling you. Life is another name for pain. It teaches you how to become better. No matter how frightening it may seem, let pain enter your life, for it will make you stronger. If you want to achieve something, but aren't fully motivated to go after it, start by imagining that you're going to fail. Accept that feeling of failure first. As for motivation, it's nothing but an illusion, a loop with no real end. To truly get motivated, you must act first. Only then will you feel genuinely motivated to achieve something. This is what the author calls the do something principle. Chapter 8. The Importance of Saying No. We all love the story of Romeo and Juliet, but what if we told you that it's not as great a love story as people make it out to be? Did you know that Romeo and Juliet's families despised each other, yet the two fell in love anyway? They decided to get married, and when their families found out, they did everything they could to stop the wedding. So Juliet took a potion that made her sleep for 2 days. Romeo didn't know this. He thought she had committed suicide, so he took poison and died. 2 days later, when Juliet woke up and learned of Romeo's death, she took her own life as well. What a tragic and pointless story, right? There's nothing ideal about it. These two people needlessly ruined their lives. Some scholars believe that Shakespeare wrote this story to show that falling in love isn't always a smart decision. The truth is, when two people use love as an escape from life's problems, their relationship isn't built on real strength. Such people are merely using each other to avoid their issues, nothing more. On the other hand, those whose love is genuine understand their struggles and work together to find solutions. They don't run from their problems. They face them head on. Every relationship must be maintained within boundaries. Learn to accept your struggles because they are your responsibility, and only you can solve them. Did you know that learning to say no is incredibly beneficial? It's not necessary to say yes to everything. Sometimes saying no is the right thing to do. You have the right to choose who you like and who you don't. It's up to you to decide whom you want as a friend. You must learn to reject. People who say yes to everything often fail to form solid opinions. Truly, committing yourself to a single relationship or a single career is meaningful, and this only happens when you're willing to reject other options. As we've said before, you can only value something when you stop caring about everything else. In any relationship, if you rely on lies, the relationship cannot be genuine. Complimenting your partner just to flatter them may make them happy in the short term, but it's not honest. It's better to be truthful with yourself and your partner. If something about your partner bothers you, tell them directly and expect the same honesty from them. Pointing out each other's flaws helps you work on them, not hiding them. Arguments in a relationship are normal. They strengthen trust. Dishonesty only enters the picture when someone finds another person more important than their partner, when someone else fulfills a need that the partner doesn't. What's the point of a relationship if you have to cheat or lie to your partner? If your partner hesitates to share their feelings with you, then that relationship is built on lies, not trust. There's no real strength in such a relationship, and you can never truly trust it with your eyes closed. Chapter 9. And Then You Die. The author had a friend named Josh. One night, while they were at a party, Josh suddenly got the idea to jump from a high platform. The place was so high that no sober person would ever think of jumping from there, but in a drunken state, Josh thought it was a good idea and jumped. Below the platform was a large lake, and Josh fell straight into it. Unfortunately, he drowned and died. This event had a profound impact on the author, and for 12 years he carried the grief, sinking into deep depression. One night, the author dreamt of Josh saying to him, "Why are you so concerned about my death when you're dying a little every day?" The author then realized that what happened to Josh was beyond his control. He couldn't change it, yet he had spent all those years feeling responsible for it, ruining his own life. He understood that death is inevitable. It comes for all of us one day, but we cannot stop living today because of the fear of death. His friend's death had, in fact, made the author a more responsible and better person. The greatest truth of life, death, had taught him how to live. Although the author still had insecurities in his life, the difference was that he no longer cared about them. He had learned that life is short, and it should be lived joyfully every single moment. We all fear death, but we forget that death is unavoidable. If there were no death, what meaning would life hold? Embracing the reality of death and living fully in every moment is what true vitality is all about. But the most important question is, how do we live before we die? How will the world remember us after we're gone? There's a theory called the butterfly effect, which suggests that the flapping of a butterfly's wings in Africa could cause a hurricane in Florida. One small action from you could make a big impact in the world, but it's up to you to decide what that action will be. Most people ignore this question because they either find it too difficult to answer, or they simply don't know what they want to do with their lives. Ignoring this question means living without direction, merely going through the motions of life. Believe that you are great, even if you don't have immense wealth or aren't yet successful. Just by believing in your greatness, you will strive to become better, and whatever you do, you'll do it with perfection. You will become what you choose to be, and one day, like everyone else, you will die. You can't escape this truth. But remember, death only comes to those who have lived. Be grateful that you got the chance to live. Life is short, and we can't control everything. But what we can control is how we choose to face it. Whether we embrace the challenges or run from them, we all will face the same inevitable end, death. But until then, let's choose to live fully, embrace our struggles, and stop giving a about the things that don't matter. Conclusion. At the heart of the subtle art of not giving a f is the idea that we cannot and should not care about everything. Life is limited, and so are our energy and resources. Mark Manson challenges us to stop obsessing over superficial values like constant positivity, material success, and validation from others. Instead, he encourages us to embrace life's struggles, accept our limitations, and focus on what truly matters, what aligns with our personal values. Failure, pain, and even death are inevitable parts of life, but it's through these struggles that we grow, learn, and find meaning. When we stop worrying about things we cannot control and start focusing on the things that truly make a difference, we free ourselves from unnecessary stress and live more authentic, fulfilling lives. Ultimately, this book isn't about being indifferent to everything. It's about choosing where to invest your energy wisely. When we understand that not everything deserves our attention, we can live a life of purpose and peace. And that, perhaps, is the most liberating lesson of all. Thank you for listening to the summary of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F by Mark Manson. If this summary resonated with you or helped you see life from a fresh perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to share your feedback in the comments or let me know what book you'd like me to summarize next. Your support means a lot. If you enjoyed this, please consider leaving a review or hitting the like button. It helps me bring more insightful summaries your way. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more. Until next time, keep focusing on what truly matters. And remember, not everything deserves your attention.